4 years, they were inseparable. Two names that echoed through every corner of the C-drama world, not just as co-stars, but as symbols of brotherhood, loyalty, and something that went beyond words. Wang Yibo and Xiao Zhan, the duo who captured hearts through their undeniable chemistry, seemed untouchable. Their connection was pure, electric, and almost mythical to those who followed them from their earliest days in the Untamed. But what fans didn't see was that behind the glimmering lights and easy laughter, there was a silence that crept in, one that tore everything apart. The day Wang Yibo disappeared from Xiao Zhan's life was not announced, not explained, and never officially addressed. It was as if he had been erased, as though their entire friendship had been swallowed by a quiet force no one dared name. The shock wasn't just in their separation, it was in the silence that followed. That cold, hollow absence became louder than any scandal, louder than any denial. It started subtly. Fans noticed the small changes first: interviews where Xiao Zhan's eyes would flicker when Wang Yibo's name came up, or the way Yibo would smile faintly and quickly shift topics. It wasn't hatred, it was something heavier, something unsaid. Their moments together had always seemed natural, effortless, and unplanned, like two souls who didn't need to speak to understand each other. So when that stopped, everyone felt it. There were theories. Some claimed it was due to agency restrictions, that both were warned to keep their distance for career image control. Others whispered about a confidential agreement that forbade them from collaborating again. But those who truly followed them knew it wasn't just business, it was personal. Something had broken between them, quietly, painfully, and deeply. The silence began around the time Xiao Zhan faced one of the darkest periods of his career. While the world turned chaotic around him, fans waited for Yibo to say something, anything. But nothing came. No posts, no statements, not even a public gesture. For a duo that once spoke through glances, the silence was deafening. Some fans tried to defend him, saying perhaps Yibo was helping behind the scenes. Others felt betrayed. How could he stay quiet when the person he once called his brother was hurting? One fan wrote on Weibo in a now-viral post. But what if that silence wasn't betrayal? What if it was protection? According to several close insiders at the time, Yibo was under intense pressure. His agency had allegedly warned him against any public involvement. He was torn, said one anonymous staff member who claimed to have been around during those tense months. He wanted to reach out, but he was scared. Everything he did was being watched. It wasn't that he didn't care, it was that he wasn't allowed to show he did. Meanwhile, Xiao Zhan carried on. He smiled, acted, and spoke to the media as if the world hadn't turned upside down. But the emptiness was visible to those who looked closely. His interviews grew shorter, his laughter less frequent. When asked about Wang Yibo, his answers were polite but distant. It was as if he had built a wall, not out of anger, but self-preservation. Fans still remember one particular award show where the two were present but seated on opposite sides of the stage. Cameras captured every stolen glance, every almost smile, every flicker of emotion they couldn't hide. They didn't speak that night, at least not publicly. Yet the unspoken tension between them filled the entire room. It wasn't hate, it was history. And it hurt to watch. Rumors spread fast. Some said they had a falling out over trust, something about a broken promise or a misinterpreted word. Others said it was about loyalty, that Xiao Zhan felt abandoned when Yibo's silence became the loudest statement of all. But neither of them confirmed anything. Instead, they both continued forward, pretending that the chapter they shared never existed. In a 2024 interview, when asked if there were people he missed from his earlier years in the industry, Xiao Zhan paused for a long time. His answer was simple, but it cut through fans' hearts. Some people are better remembered quietly. That one line reignited everything. Fans flooded social media with old clips of them laughing on set, teasing each other, exchanging inside jokes that only they could understand. Every smile became evidence of what once was. Every silence became a wound that never healed. Meanwhile, Wang Yibo remained elusive. He avoided interviews that touched on the subject. When a reporter asked about working with Xiao Zhan again, he smiled softly and said, "I'm grateful for every person I've learned from." That was all. Short, polished, and painfully distant. But to those who knew, there was a crack in his tone, a quiet ache behind the professionalism. 4 years, that was all fans had: fragments, half-truths, and nostalgia. They pieced together stories through backstage footage, subtle social media hints, and unconfirmed sightings. Some claimed they still met privately, others believed they were strangers now. But the fascination never faded. If anything, it grew stronger. Because deep down, fans didn't want to believe that something so genuine could end without reason. In early 2025, whispers began circulating again. A fan claimed to have seen Wang at a quiet art exhibit in Seoul, and hours later, Xiao Zhan was reportedly spotted at the same venue. There were no photos, just accounts, soft murmurs of, "they were there." True or not, it reignited hope. The idea that maybe, after everything, they still found ways to cross paths quietly. But perhaps the most heartbreaking part of it all wasn't their separation, it was how it changed their fans. The community that once united in love for both slowly split in two. Fan wars erupted online, with some accusing Yibo'S of betrayal, others blaming Xiao Zhan for emotional distance. What had once been a celebration of their bond became a battlefield of loyalty. Both stars, ironically, stayed silent through it all. The day Wang disappeared from Xiao Zhan's life wasn't a single day, it was a gradual fading. A slow, quiet unraveling of a connection that had once seemed unbreakable. One moment they were laughing on camera, the next, the silence became permanent. No goodbye, no closure. Just absence. But fans still remember. They remember the way they used to look at each other during press conferences, finishing each other's sentences, the inside jokes that no one else could decode. They remember the friendship that didn't need words, the kind that lives in every lingering glance. And maybe that's why the silence hurts more than any spoken word could. Sometimes, the most powerful heartbreaks aren't about betrayal or lies. They're about love that couldn't survive the weight of fame, pressure, and expectation. Maybe Wang didn't choose to disappear. Maybe he was forced to. Maybe Xiao Zhan didn't choose to move on. Maybe he had to. The truth, perhaps, is buried somewhere between their smiles and the silence that followed. What remains undeniable is their legacy. Together, they changed the way fans saw on-screen partnerships. They blurred the line between fiction and reality, showing how deep bonds can form even under the harshest spotlight. Their chemistry wasn't scripted, it was instinctive. And that's what makes their distance so hauntingly real. Today, whenever fans replay old interviews or behind-the-scenes clips, it's impossible not to feel that bittersweet pang, the ache of knowing something beautiful once existed but may never return. Still, there's a quiet hope that lingers. Because if there's one thing both Wang and Xiao Zhan have taught their fans, it's that silence doesn't always mean the end. Sometimes, it's just part of the story. People close to both stars say that even though they've grown apart publicly, there's no animosity between them. They still respect each other deeply, said one mutual acquaintance. They've just chosen to walk different paths for now. But the connection is still there, you can't fake what they had. And maybe that's enough for now. Because some bonds don't need constant presence, they just need understanding. The silence between them may never be broken publicly, but its echo continues to shape how fans see them, how they remember them, and how they believe in them. For those who were there from the beginning, the story of Wang and Xiao Zhan isn't about endings. It's about what remains unspoken, the loyalty, the loss, and the quiet promise that even if time pulls them apart, the memory of their bond will always pull them back together, somehow. No one knows if they'll ever share a stage again, or if the cameras will ever capture that familiar spark. But one thing is certain, the day Wang disappeared from Xiao Zhan's life didn't erase what they built, it only made it legendary. Because real connections don't vanish. They just learn how to live in silence. And in that silence, fans still listen, still waiting, still believing, that one day, maybe without warning, the world will see them together again, even for a fleeting moment. Because some stories aren't meant to end, they're simply paused, waiting for the right time to continue. And when that time comes, Midnight in Seoul will be the first to tell the story, the real one. Stay tuned. Time has a way of changing things, or perhaps, it simply reveals what was always hidden beneath the surface. For months after Wang quiet disappearance from Xiao Zhan's life, the entertainment world moved on. Awards were handed out, new dramas premiered, new faces rose to fame. But for fans who had lived through their story, something still felt unfinished, as if a thread connecting them had never really been cut, only stretched to its breaking point. In the early months of 2025, something began to shift. It started small, a cryptic post on a music producer's account showing 2 coffee cups and the caption, "An unexpected reunion in Seoul." There were no names, no tags, nothing direct. But fans, sharp as ever, noticed a subtle detail. One of the cups had a small keychain attached, a symbol Wang was known to carry. Hours later, another post appeared, this time from a stylist long associated with Xiao Zhan, writing simply, "Some memories never fade, they just find new beginnings." The fandom ignited instantly. Threads, theories, and whispers exploded across every platform. Could it be? Could the silence finally be breaking? Those who had followed every detail knew that Seoul wasn't a random place. Years ago, both Wang and Xiao Zhan had talked about their shared dream of filming abroad, not as co-stars, but as creators. They had once promised, off-camera, to one day work on something that truly belonged to them. A story that wasn't written for ratings or profit, but for the love of the art that brought them together in the first place. So when reports began to circulate that Wang had extended his stay in Seoul after a private event, and Xiao Zhan was, coincidentally, seen there a few days later, fans couldn't ignore it. The pieces fit too perfectly. And for the first time in years, the idea of them sharing the same space didn't feel impossible anymore. It felt inevitable. Inside sources remained quiet, but one entertainment columnist hinted, "Some connections never really die, they just wait for the noise to fade so they can find their way back." That single line trended for 2 days straight in China, Korea, and beyond. Still, neither Wang nor Xiao Zhan said a word. The silence continued, but this time, it wasn't heavy. It wasn't painful. It felt like the calm before something important. At a fan event weeks later, Wang was asked a question about forgiveness. His answer was short but hauntingly sincere. Sometimes, the best way to apologize is to show up when the time feels right. The crowd fell silent. The clip went viral within hours. Fans couldn't help but connect his words to one person, Xiao Zhan. Meanwhile, Xiao Zhan gave an interview around the same time. When asked about the people who had shaped him the most, he smiled softly and said, "Some people don't need to be in your life every day to still mean something." Those words hit differently. They weren't just poetic, they were personal. Then came the most unexpected twist. A short video surfaced online from a staff member who claimed to have worked on a recent production rehearsal in Seoul. The clip was blurry, shot from a distance, but unmistakable to those who knew what to look for. 2 figures, one tall and composed, the other wearing a familiar cap, standing together under the faint glow of a studio sign. They weren't talking loudly, just quietly exchanging a few words. The fandom erupted. "It's them. It's Yibo and Xiao Zhan. It's happening." Hashtags flooded Weibo, X, and TikTok within minutes. The video was taken down soon after, but the damage, or rather, the hope, had already been done. Neither side confirmed the encounter. But insiders hinted that a new creative project was being discussed, one that could redefine how the public sees them again. Not as actors trapped in the past, but as individuals strong enough to write their own narrative. For longtime followers, this moment felt poetic. Years of silence, tension, and separation had all led here, not to a grand reunion under flashing cameras, but a quiet one. Away from the noise. Away from the spotlight. Exactly how their story began. And perhaps that's why fans have refused to let go. Because somewhere in the midst of all the fame, the controversies, and the carefully crafted PR statements, there's still something achingly human between them. 2 men who once shared dreams, laughter, and heartbreak, and who might, even now, be finding their way back to each other in the simplest, most genuine way possible. The narrative of Wang and Xiao Zhan has never been about drama or rumors. It's about connection, the kind that resists fame, time, and distance. It's about how 2 people can influence each other's lives so deeply that even years of silence can't erase it. In Seoul, beneath the cold city lights and the hum of anonymity, maybe they finally found the space to just be. No cameras, no judgment, just 2 old friends remembering what once made them unstoppable. And even if fans never see a reunion on screen, they'll always have this, the hope, the possibility, the belief that sometimes the stories that break us are the same ones that bring us home again. Because no matter how much time passes, one truth remains: Wang and Xiao Zhan's story is far from over. It's evolving quietly, away from the noise, preparing for the moment when it will finally step back into the light. And when that moment comes, when that silence finally breaks for good, the world won't be ready for what follows. Because some stories don't need to be rewritten, they just need to be continued. The day Wang Yibo disappeared from Xiao Zhan's life marked the end of one era. But this subtle dance of reconnection, the quiet smiles and indirect words, feels like the start of something new. A rebirth, not of the fame they once shared, but of the truth they left behind. The silence that once hurt fans has turned into something softer, something full of anticipation. And maybe that's how all great stories evolve. They fade for a while, only to return stronger, deeper, and more real than before. For the fans who have waited, who have believed, who never stopped replaying those old interviews and behind-the-scenes moments, this is your reminder: the story isn't done. It's just finding its way back into the light, one heartbeat at a time. Because sometimes, the most powerful comebacks don't start with an announcement, they start with a whisper. And if you listen closely, that whisper is already here. Dizzy if you've followed Wang Yibo and Xiao Zhan's journey this far, don't stop here. Their story is still unfolding, and every heartbeat of it will be revealed first on midnight in Seoul. Subscribe, stay tuned, and dive deeper into the moments the media won't show you. Because on midnight in Seoul, the silence finally speaks, and the truth always finds its way home. Crescent Moon.